r/AskReddit. Doctors and nurses of Reddit who have delivered babies to mothers who clearly cheated on their husbands. What was that like? Anesthesiologist here. C-sections are typically done under spinal anesthesia, and we are the ones at the head of the table keeping the mother calm and talking her through the procedure while the surgeons operate. I've seen it more than once, but I remember one in particular when the parents were both very Caucasian and the baby was very much not. The actual father obviously had to be very dark-skinned. At delivery, when the not father saw the baby, he just looked down at his wife, who was starting to cry, and calmly said, "You ducking giraffe," and walked out. She started screaming for him to come back, but there wasn't much she could do since she was, still being operated on. She lost it to the point I eventually had to sedate her just a bit, because she was in danger of injuring herself. As far as I know, her husband never came back to the hospital. I don't know what happened after that. Paramedic here. Our crew delivered a full birth in the back of our rig. We have 2 paramedics in the back with a PT, a driver, and I'm working on the laptop listening to info they are telling me to add to the report. All of a sudden, it goes kind of quiet. I hear the mother let out a very loud "oh shit, it's not white." She was very white. Few more seconds of silence, and I'm like, the driver alarm, beeping light on the center console sent from a button in the back, was pressed 2 times quickly, generally meaning to turn around to get info for the report. I turn from the front passenger seat to see a very dark skin colored baby, I'm guessing Cuban. I can't see the mother's face, but all I see is her shaking her head. She begins to worry, saying that her husband is meeting us there at the hospital. He can't see this. I just continue the report, and I'm not sure what the problem is, but I guess we'll see when we get there. Flash forward to the We stop outside the ambulance bay. I get out to open the doors, and am met by another very white heavyset guy in a uniform shirt, dress pants and glasses. Asked me if his wife was in there, and she was in labor when he was coming home. Hospital policy dictates that we can't have random people, that we can't confirm identity that close to the rig when opening doors for PT safety. Security is there quick, holds him back a bit. We open the doors, roll the PT and her newborn out. He takes one look, sees the color of the baby. Jaw drop, look of despair. Like a 1,000-yard stare. Even security had a look like, wow, that woman ducked up, and this guy knows it now. Wife, babe, I can explain every bit of this. I know it looks weird, but I can. We wheel her into no sign of husband. Last I knew, the husband didn't check into the hospital as a visitor. I'm assuming he went home to pack his stuff. Had 2 women give birth a few days apart on my floor. Turns out they actually had the same baby daddy. The father of the 2 newborns got both patients pregnant around the same time. It was an interesting day for the social worker. So a friend of mine, he is unfortunately dead, had cancer, and he was dating a girl for about 2 years. He then discovered he had cancer and that he would live at best 1 more year. His girlfriend announced to him a week later that she was pregnant. They were both white. He kept on saying that life is a joke. He was happy because he would have a baby now, but sad because he would die in a year. Anyway, 9 months later the baby was born, and it was black. He then disappeared for weeks, and we learned that he had died a month later. Felt so freaking sorry. I was assisting at a cesarean when I was a junior doctor. The woman's dark-skinned partner had been in prison 9 months or so. I took the baby immediately upon delivery and announced cheerily, "It's a boy." Her first words were, "Is it black?" Luckily the baby was a mocha color that could have gone either way, and I told her in a mildly confused manner, "It could be. Is it supposed to be black?" We had a very sweet blonde-haired blue-eyed mom and dad along with their entire extended family in the room for a delivery one busy afternoon at work. Think aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma, and grandpa too. The baby is born, and as the doctor places her on the mom's chest, the first words out of her mouth are, "That's not my baby. That's not my baby." The baby in question, still attached at the umbilical cord, has beautiful dark curly black hair and dark skin. The nurse looks at her and tells her that this is definitely her baby because she's still attached to you, and she, not so quietly, tells the nurse there's no way, I never slept with a black man. It's not mine. The father is standing there silent, not sure what to do. A long awkward silence fills the room. We clean her and baby up as cheerfully as we can. We see the extended family filter out of the room and the father leaves to get a cigarette. About 10 minutes later, a tall black guy walks up to our front desk asking how to get to the patient in question's room. A friend of mine tells the story of his aunt giving birth, in the 1970s or 80s, to a baby that at first glance appeared to be of Asian descent. Aunt and her husband are both Caucasian Midwesterners from long lines of the same sort, going back to Germany. There was evidently a shocked moment, and then the aunt's father, my friend's grandfather, quipped, "Well, they say 1 in 7 babies is born Chinese," and everyone laughed. The tension broke long enough for the doctor, also a white Midwesterner of German stock, said that likely the kid's color is just off due to the events of the birth. That baby is now a man in his 30s or 40s, and looks like your typical Midwesterner. He just had some tinge to his skin for a few hours following the birth, plus some dark hair at birth that has since lightened up. Jaundice. Not a doctor, but if I remember correctly, it is due to the baby's immune system going haywire during birth. They put babies under a blow lamp for up to 24 hours to make it go away. Yeah, my little girl had this. Made me so sad watching her sit under that light, even though I knew she was going to be okay. No idea what the doctors thought, but I had a phone call from the wife asking for my blood type while they were in the hospital the next day, and I ducked home. I'm A negative. The wife is O negative. Bob is A positive. I've done enough science to know where that's going. Have done DNA testing. I'm 100% the dad. Still not sure how to get more interesting science info about the myriad markers that apparently exist, as explained to me by a clinical scientist. Sometimes it's not a hard plus, or you can actually be somewhere in between. They can easily be mistyped as, and often are. If you are curious, you both can be tested again. Willing to bet one of you is a soft plus. My so and I just had our first in January. He has brown hair and I'm blonde. When she arrived, the nurse exclaimed, "Wow, look at that red hair." We know it's a recessive gene, but it wasn't the very first thing we expected to hear. We looked at each other for a moment and I said, in my drugged and exhausted post-labor stupor, "I swear she's yours." Newborn had chlamydia. Got it from the mom, obviously. So the mom admits she was cheating on the dad, because there's no other way to explain that one. Except the dad was cheating too, with the other guy's girlfriend, and all 4 of them had chlamydia, with no idea who had it first. They also had no idea who the actual dad was. That was a rodeo. Edit. Well, that's what I get for editing before bed. Let's be honest, everything we know about chlamydia we learned from teen romcoms. Freaking koalas. Not exactly cheating, but definitely an awkward situation. During my OB rotation in med school, I was caring for a patient with a very large family, the kind that all wanted to be part of the delivery process from beginning to end. They were having a baby girl, and the room was absolutely filled from wall to wall with pink presents, bassinets, blankets, clothing, embroidered quilts, you name it. Anyways, I deliver the baby and I'm horrified, thinking there was some sort of mutation in the baby's vagina. After my initial shock, I realized it was simply a perfectly normal looking baby penis and testicles. The "congrats, it's a boy" was met with shock instead of excitement initially, but then everyone was so happy after understanding he was perfectly healthy. Apparently even with good prenatal care, you can miss the male genitalia on ultrasounds about 1% of the time. I'm of Irish descent. Extremely pale, freckled, wavy dark hair and darker green eyes. My husband is half Native American, half German. Dark hair and slightly wavy as well. My daughter came out with light brown curly hair and ever so slight strawberry blonde pieces mixed throughout, curls for days. And the nurse goes, "Wow, where did you get that hair?" Knowing I had similar color as a baby and my mother has kinky curly hair, my husband, in a room full of nurses, goes, "I don't know, jaded. Where did she get that hair? I could have ducking killed him." Edit. Please no one tell my husband how much traction this story got. It'll just make him cocky and the jokes will get worse. I already have a rough time finding him hats. Super awkward for everyone involved. The husband was only in the room for a bit then left and didn't see him again. The fob, father of baby, showed up after the baby was born. I've also had where they didn't know whose baby it was, so both guys were present to see whose they thought it was. Paramedic here. Had a mother give birth to a healthy baby in a home. Situational awareness had not helped me yet at this point. I asked if the father was here to cut the cord. We paramedics usually shy away from this duty because it opens us up to unwanted legal ramifications should something go wrong. There was a calm in the air after I asked the question and went on to do it myself. Come a few moments later, I was approached by another occupant of the home who informed me that this was a home for victims of sexual assault and that the father of the baby was indeed also the father of the mother and was currently incarcerated due to the aforementioned situation. It was an awkward ride to the hospital after that. I'm a nurse. I have seen quite a few situations where dad turns out not to be dad, but never because of the color of the newborn. I have, however, seen an absolute giraffe ton of kids who are born and don't look like the same ethnicity as their parents for days or sometimes a couple of weeks. Babies often look darker when they are born. Just saying, some of these anecdotal stories might not necessarily be true. I have seen quite a few situations where dad turns out not to be dad, but never because of the color of the newborn. Go on, grabs popcorn. Sometimes we have kids in the NICU for months on end, if they are preemies or have congenital conditions. There is a lot of time for family drama and some of the less classy families really don't mind if it plays out in public very loudly. There has been more than one occasion where it turns out that the close family friend who visits a lot ends up being dad. We also had one horrible situation where granddad turned out to be dad, as in the maternal granddad. Also work in a NICU. Have one baby with a very dark skinned dad and very fair mom. Baby is very anemic and looks pale white. Dad's a total dick. Insisted on paternity test. Stopped visiting. Paternity came back positive, but he's still acting like it's not his. So sad. Not a doctor, but my best friend's brother-in-law has two black parents and came out completely white. DNA test confirmed they were both his parents. It just be like that sometimes. Edit. I'm only guessing they tested the mother as well to rule out any possibility of an accidental swap at the hospital. LMRO, you're savage. I had a female patient come in with abdominal pain. Pregnancy test was positive. She was with her husband who, evidently, had a vasectomy about a year prior. I slowly backed out of the room after that one. Edit. I know it's possible, just improbable. I knew a guy who had a vasectomy, and his wife got pregnant. He accused her of cheating throughout her pregnancy, until the baby was born, and paternity tests proved it was his. So he went back to get his vasectomy redone by the same doctor who botched it in the first place. Well, his wife got pregnant again, with twins. And so this guy was sure that his wife had cheated on him this time. He basically emotionally abused that poor little woman for her entire pregnancy, abandoned her for much of it, called her a whore, etc. When the babies were born, paternity tests proved that they were his. They ended up suing the doctor who performed the botched vasectomy, and the wife divorced the husband for how horribly he treated her throughout her pregnancies. What a moron. Why didn't he just go and get his swimmers checked as soon as she said she was pregnant instead of assuming she cheated? Okay, story from a friend of my brother's. She worked as a nurse and a woman and her husband came in. They were both white and she delivered a child that was black. The husband immediately starts saying WTF while she is going on and on about dome and trays and everything. He orders a DNA test. While this is going on, her mother and stepdad show up. The stepdad is black After the testing is done, the DNA test ends up showing that the baby is the stepdad's. Her husband instantly dropped her and cut ties. Edit. In response to some comments. This didn't happen over the course of a couple of hours. Husband hung out, albeit reluctantly, until things were conclusive. Once testing showed it wasn't his baby, they tested the stepdad. Probably suspected something. I wasn't there, I don't know the deeper details. This went from 0 to 100 to 1000 real quick. Okay, I'm a nurse, but this isn't a story about a birth I witnessed. It was my own birth. And although my mother definitely didn't cheat, all the midwives were convinced she had. And yeah, it'll be buried, but I think it's a funny story, so I'm going to share. For background, my mother, J, is white and had got married young to another white guy, D, actually forced to by my grandparents, who were horrified she was living in sin. Their relationship petered out and they separated, but remained very good friends. Then she met my father, A black man, and began a relationship with him. Mum was still married at the time. Neither her nor her husband were in a hurry to get divorced, and he became good friends with Mum's new partner, my dad. Mum fell pregnant with me. Time moves along. She goes into labor and needs to head up to the hospital. Dad was working and couldn't make it home in time to get her there, so still being good friends with the husband, she rings him, and he comes around to drive her to hospital and decides to hang out until I'm born. After an hour or so Dad arrives. He was freaking out a bit, so his best friend, H, also a black guy, drove him because Dad didn't trust himself. They arrive at the hospital right as Mum is ready to deliver. The midwives come out to the waiting room to grab the husband to be there when baby is born. They knew that Mum's actual husband, D, had driven her there, so assumed that he was the father of the baby. Went and grabbed him and tried to drag him into the delivery room. He freaked out and yelled, no, I'm not the father, I'm just the husband. The father is Aboriginal. Dad and H pulled up into the car park as this is happening, and Dad leaps out of the car. Decides he needs to have a quick smoke to settle his nerves before he goes in. His best friend H doesn't smoke cigarettes but does smoke weed and is pretty stoned, so he walks in ahead. Just then the midwives come running back to the waiting room to grab the actual father and see the only black guy in there. Obviously him, right? So they take him and suit him up to bring him down to delivery. Being pretty stoned, H doesn't question this and just goes along with it. The midwives reach the delivery room and shove him inside. Mum, legs in stirrups, and at the pushing stage goes absolutely ballistic. Not that black guy, has not the father, Geo get the other one. The midwives hustle H out and return him to the waiting room to wait with DA. My dad has come inside by now, and the midwives marched up to him and said something like, I hope you're the father this time, otherwise I'm going to just give up and she can birth alone. So that's the story about how the hospital went through 3 different men before they finally got to my actual father. Thank you for watching.